Hello and welcome to episode 49 of It's Never Sunny in Seattle, a Seattle Mariners podcast. I'm your host, Evan James, joined today by Michael Ahedo, and Andrews Jorstad is on vacation. But we are joined today by special guest from Cespedes Barbecue, Jordan Shusterman. Jordan, how are you doing?
What's up, guys? So good to be joining you. I love doing Mariners podcasts because it is a wonderful opportunity for me to talk to like-minded idiots who follow this team and root for them.
I think that's probably the right way to phrase it.
But yeah, I'm happy to be here. So thanks for having me on.
Well, the Mariners have had a pretty good couple of weeks, right? After a May that was mostly dismal for the first part, they picked it back up a little bit, won a couple of series here back to back, while the Angels have been in something of an absolute disintegrating free fall that has been just wonderful to witness. But Jordan, before we started the podcast, you were giving us a little preview that the Mariners the Mariners last night DFA'd a player who so far has been oddly critical to their success at this juncture, one Mike Ford. So you have some Mike Ford details to fill us in on.
Yeah, so I think a lot of us, when we saw that roster move last night, it was like, wow, this is end of an era, Mike Ford. We somehow can't escape him. He has been DFA'd before, for sure, right? We have definitely seen him DFA'd before, but it seems like this is maybe the end of it. But I know we've all been laughing and saying, oh my God, why is Mike Ford there? But I hope that people know that Mike Ford, to some people, to the good people of Princeton, New Jersey, and the great folks, these smart nerds in the Ivy League, that Mike Ford was once the Shohei Ohtani of the Ivy League. Did you guys not? I know he doesn't look like the incredible athlete that Shohei Ohtani is, or that you normally associate with the two-way player. But I'm telling you that when Mike Ford was at Princeton, which, by the way, Mike, like, you're at Princeton, like, I guess, maybe he didn't finish his degree. He wasn't drafted, so maybe he doesn't actually have a Princeton degree yet. But you just have to understand that in 2013, okay, this guy wasn't even drafted. This is the other thing. I mean, but this explains when you look at him. It's like, okay, well, this is why he wasn't drafted. As a junior, okay, at Princeton in 2013, this dude hit 320. He had a 946 OPS, only 6 home runs. I know he was basically this size, but on the mound, 64 innings, 9 starts, 0.98 ERA in the Ivy League.
Whoa.
He was an absolute ace. Now, did he only strike out 32 in those 64 innings? Sure, that's fine. But he allowed 0 homers, and no one could get a barrel off of Mike Ford. So when you think like, oh, Mike Ford, who's this guy? Just know that he's more athletic than he looks, and I hope he never hits for the Mariners ever again.
But we are looking for bullpen help, so he might have a role here.
That's a good point.
Was he ever?
He's right. He throws righty though. That's the problem. If the lefty, if he was lefty, I think they already would have tried it. But
was he scouted as a pitcher?
Well, again, he wasn't really scouted much at all. I mean, he was in the Cape
at all.
He was in the Cape too as a hitter. He pitched in the Cape also and was terrible. So that's probably why. Yeah, he was a terrible pitcher in the Cape. So, but the Ivy Leaguers, they just couldn't touch him. So, yeah, man.
Mike Ford.
But a true salute to a guy that again, clearly they like having him around. I'm sure he's a great guy, but not, I think, where we wanted to for this season to be at this point.
Yeah, it's got to fill that Dan Vogelbach. I
know.
Vogie, who was the catcher that we did this with last year? Jacob Nottingham. Yeah.
Oh God, that poor guy.
That was it was a different situation, but yes, there are definitely some similarities we've had our fair share of, and it's like, man, I thought we were past this, but I guess we're not.
No,
I guess we're never past it.
Back to 2016.
There's always a moment in the year where some like obscure scrub is playing and getting starting time, and you have to realize that we're way off course, right? Yeah. Like whatever the plan was, we're not on it anymore. But today, I think we should kick it off talking about the brightest topic in Mariners world, which is our young child, literal 21-year-old star, was the AL Rookie of the Month last month, excuse me, in May. When the Mariners had their worst month of the year and looked like they were just in complete free fall, Julio kind of buoyed the team for the second half of the month, right? Like him and Ty France really put this team on their backs and bothered to get them some wins when they didn't always deserve it. But Mikey, Jordan, how exciting is Julio, and how does it feel to have a superstar of this caliber once again, and this soon? Because frankly, there was no guarantees he was even going to be up right now at the beginning of the season, right?
Yeah, I mean, I talked some about Julio, and I have more thoughts, but I want to hear what Jordan has to say about
Yeah,
our
I
young
mean,
king.
I think like it's pretty it's really surreal, right? So we had like a glimpse of this, obviously with Kelnick, not in a good, but like in the sense of like, oh my God, there's this guy that is so young and so talented. And you get to the point where it's like, and this was true with Kelnick even when he was struggling, where you're watching every at bat so intently more than any other player, right? Like by far, right? Every single thing that he does, it's like, what's going to happen next, right? And with Julio, I think what's been so incredible is sure the performance, and we can get into right like how he's doing this while striking out a ton and not really walking, right? There's a lot of things like that we can get into in terms of like what's sustainable and what we can expect going forward. But strictly from like a viewing experience, he is so he just doesn't care. Like when he was striking out 12, when he did 12 strikeouts that he didn't deserve, right? Or when he's whiffing like crazy on, off speed pitches, like he is so unfazed by any levels of failure. He is having such a good time. He knows he is the most talented player on the field basically all the time. And so he's just rolling, man. Like he's learning every single at bat, every single, ball in the outfield, which is of course like the whole Julio is the fastest player in baseball and plays center is still something I'm like adjusting to.
Wild, so wild.
But just the whole persona comes through even when you watch his 3 or 4 at bats a game. And that's something that I think we all, in our hopes and dreams we had, because we've heard so much about him and he's told us so much about himself, right? Because he is so out there. And you could say that could backfire in some ways, but it just doesn't because he's just so good. And so on top of all the actual production, which we can get into, like just from a viewing experience, it has been just a true delight every single night to watch somebody like him. I can't. That's the thing that I cannot really replicate, right? I mean, the Mariners have had good players, even as they've struggled over the last decade plus. But in terms of just like who I want to tune in and watch, there's nothing else like him that I can remember. So
It really is the difference just in mindset between like him and Kelnick too, where like
exactly
he struggled and he struggled a lot to start, but he just, I don't know, it's like it's really cliche, but he really is just like a gamer. He is just that talented. And I don't know, like I think the only way in which you kind of visibly saw him pressing was kind of a positive, where like he would get into hitters counts and he knows like I can really take a rip in this count, and he was swinging and he was missing early on. But that I think that's kind of an all right approach for, especially for a young hitter. I think something that he probably realizes that he doesn't really need to do that. Like he obviously has plus raw power. Like his max exit velo is, in the 95th percentile. So just to talk about like markers of athleticism, I think that's a lot of like the max, the max stats, like the max sprint speed, max exit velo. I think that, obviously really talks about where his potential is in terms of sprint speed and power. And kind of like I think Evan said in the Lookout Landing Slack the other day, this is Julio with like a 30% K percentage and like not walking a ton. And he's with all of his early season struggles is hitting 20% above league average. So it really is just so exciting to think about like what this could become, because he's already, is 90 plus percentile in outs above average, sprint speed, max exit velo. Like once he becomes more consistent, I really do think he's a superstar for at least, the beginning of his career.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll say just on that, right? Like he's not that he doesn't have a plan, but he's basically doing this on raw ability at this point. Like, I'm not saying like of course he's
Yeah.
getting reports and but when you watch him, like, you really just feels like he's just kind of figuring it out as he goes, which is how it should be. And also like why they had him on the opening day roster, because they knew that he could figure this out as he goes, right? And we've seen, like, I think what we've learned with Kelenic is that he probably did need to see more pitches in the minor leagues, right? Like, that is something that, and that's even excuse. Let's even move aside all the, like, just the attitude and the mindset and like how much you could tell it was mental with Kelenic, both this year and last year with the struggles. And I mean, I know that there's other things that go into that and the actual swing and the approach and all that stuff, but like Kelenic didn't play much in the minors, right? And neither did Julio. But there are the rare guys that can just figure it out no matter where they are when they're that good. And that has always been the difference between the two of them. And it's unfair to compare Kelenic, and that's the thing. We were always going to compare them, but it's just like the standard is so ridiculous because so many guys, and yeah, we have been spoiled in the big leagues with guys like Soto and Vlad Tatis, were guys who it's like, yeah, no, they'll just be good right away. And Julio is that, right? But that's not true for everybody, and so that's why I think we've really learned that, like, no, Kelenic probably did need to see like another 100 games worth of minor league pitches.
Yeah.
So and
I do wonder.
So yeah.
Yeah, I do wonder. You know, with the alternate site and with COVID, what our parallel kind of universe looks like, where Kelenic did, maybe get called up or like had more consistent reps, like what he looks like now, because he really does look like someone who just, his pitch recognition, like the Mariners have, like Jerry Dipoto specifically has spoken pretty highly of his pitch recognition, but like he really does look like right now someone who can't really hit breaking. And you don't need to, if you can hit fastballs well enough, it just is what it is. But like it's not great.
No,
right
I mean, but that's the thing is the combination of, if you can't hit that and you're in your head about everything else, you're kind of toast before you even walk up there.
Right.
Whereas, yeah, I think like Julio, it's just like he's just processing it all the time. And yeah, he looks terrible sometimes, like he's but he doesn't care. Like, it doesn't faze him, and that's a huge difference, right? Every O for Kelenic was just digging him deeper, and Julio's like, great, I'm still gonna be batting fourth tomorrow. Like, I'm still, could be the best player. Like, and he and he's still. I mean, Julio hasn't struggled at all ever, right? And you could say that too about Kelenic, and he's still not really struggling. He's having, little bits, but again, that just speaks to that first month and all the calls that were against him, and how he could just not be fazed by that. And which is why I also thought it was hilarious. And so I got to see the Mariners in Baltimore last week, and I wasn't at the game that they won where he got ejected, but I thought it was so funny that his ejection came on a pitch that was actually a strike.
Like, it was pretty funny.
Like, of all the ones for him to like get rung on, like that one actually wasn't that bad.
I didn't know that. I didn't see that game. And it is funny.
It was
like
pretty clearly a strike. Yeah.
Or at least the difference was way closer than the other ones.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of the, I don't know what kind of internal conversations, like the umps or the union have, but like they have to know that he's been dealt a pretty crappy hand in terms of, his, how he's been called. But it is funny just to see the way that they react. Like, Julio's just a passive little, drawing a little line, and Kelnic's like saying things that kids shouldn't hear on hot mics. Throwing helmets and stuff.
Yeah. So. And it's just, again, like, I'm not giving up on Kelenic. I just think that we need to just move him aside, and hopefully they give him. I hope he just plays in AAA and for at least another couple months, because again, he's got a lot of time to make up for it, and he's still also only 22, 23. So, but no, for Julio, man, it's just been it's been sensational, and honestly, like, him being this fast and this good in center, like him being a center fielder, like completely alters just like the whole plan. Like, it's really unbelievable. I mean, this is something that when 3 years ago, us dummies were like, oh, there's too many outfielders. Like, how are they going to fit all these guys? It's like, well, look what happens. Everybody gets hurt and everybody has all these terrible things happen to them. But the
Yeah.
one question really was always going to be like, who's going to play center? Even before the last slew of Lewis injuries. And I know we saw in 2020, it was like, he's clearly a center fielder. But it was still like, I don't know if he clearly is not going to hold up physically out there.
Right.
And so Julio being it just changes everything, because it's so much easier to figure out who's going to be in a corner and finding matchups or platoons that are in corner outfield spots versus someone in center. Because to me, I thought we were just headed towards, wow, we're just going to have a bunch of these big sluggers that can't play center field, including Julio, Kelnick, Lewis, Haniger if they extend him, stuff like that. And instead, it's like, oh, nope, never mind. We have, one of the 5 fastest players in baseball.
we have one of the best.
Yeah, it's like, okay, sure. Like, so that's amazing. And that just opens up, I think, so many positives. Now, there's still obviously so many things to figure out with the other outfield spots moving forward. But that cannot be, overstated enough how important that is for him to be able to play center, let alone the offense.
Yeah. I've 2 questions. One, how many years do you think Julio plays a plus center field? Second question, what is like the criteria for a Kelnick call-up this year?
Ooh, okay, so this is kind of insane, but like the way I'm thinking about it is, how long did Mike Trout play a plus center field? And I don't mean that he's Mike Trout. I just mean that like Mike Trout was also a freak athletically. He started his career at 19, 20 and is playing center. Now, I think now we are at the point where he is no longer a plus center fielder. But he's still going to play there because he's Mike Trout, right? So I think, at least 5-6 years. I don't see why not. I mean, the fact that he was able to turn himself into this speed, like, I guess you could say he could get even bigger, but he's found a way to be this fast, this big already. And so I don't really see why he's not going to just be a plus center fielder for at least the next half decade. So that like, I'm totally sold. Like, that's just where he's going to be, barring injuries and stuff like that. As for Kelnick, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess what's the criteria for him personally, or like what are the other context things that could call him up? Because right now we can get into Trammel, right? Because Trammel playing well is also kind of changes that calculus, I feel like, which is good. But I'm not expecting to see Haniger anytime soon, and I'm not really expecting to see Lewis anytime soon.
Not in the field in any case.
Yeah. So certainly not in the field, right? That's a good point. So I think I still think it's going to be at least another couple months in terms of like what he needs to do. Like, we know the overall offensive numbers are probably still going to always look pretty good in Tacoma. I would say the biggest difference is just going to be that he's going to have to be like, the K rate's just going to have to come way down, right? He's going to have to be, I think, showing enough. Like right now he's hitting 310, 347, 606. Like, okay, that looks pretty good, right? But he's still at 27 strikeouts and 4 walks in 16 games, and so I have to imagine he's going to have to prove a little bit more on the discipline side, or if he's just absolutely crushing fastballs or absolutely crushing right-handed pitching or something like that. I really don't think he's coming. I would be stunned if he's coming up before he's like truly overwhelming the competition. I have to imagine that he has to show more strictly on the discipline side, because I think the power is going to be there, especially against weaker competition in AAA and with those ballparks. So it has to be more on the discipline side, and just seeing as many pitches as possible. Obviously, they're tracking swing decisions and stuff like that. So I'm sure there's numbers even more beyond just strikeout and walk rate that they're looking at. And that's what I think he's going to have to prove. Because, you can keep showing us the home runs, and I love to see that. I'm sure that's good for his confidence, but it's going to be the stuff that's not quite as sexy that I think is going to get him
back. Yeah, I definitely think it's more process kind of stuff. And speaking of, like, Taylor Trammel, he's really not swinging and missing. Like, his peripherals in terms of, so Alex Chamberlain, I think this is more for pitchers, but I think it generally kind of works for hitters, and obviously there are outliers, but a good kind of rule of thumb for K percentage is just to take swinging strike rate and multiply it by 2, and you have error bars, but his Trammel's, I just picked 7 games as kind of a random-ish arbitrary number, but his 7-game rolling swinging strike rate right now is 10.5. So you multiply that, and that's 22. I'm all right at math, right? Is that how that works? 21. It's early here. Also, my cat is attacking me.
You're
But I think that's what his K percentage is. So, I mean, he did have that game. Was it against the Orioles where he just? I think he went like 3 for or 4 for. It was kind of a lucky game, you know. They were kind of falling in, but that's also just kind of how baseball works. Is like you put the ball in play and like hope good things happen. So it is really encouraging, and I've actually been thinking lately, like if he is even a fourth outfielder, like kind of caliber player, that's a huge shot in the arm, especially when we can't really trust anyone to be healthy.
right, and obviously he had the scare earlier in the year with his fluke injury.
Hamstring.
Yeah, it was weird. I talked to him about it in Baltimore, and he was saying it was like a very strange. Like at the time, like if you saw the video, it was like, oh, he's done for the year. Like it looked terrible. It looked like a knee situation, and apparently it was sort of a knee situation. But he was fine. Like they obviously back really quickly. And the craziest thing about him. So first of all, I was going to mention that like he played 70 games in AAA last year. Like he has seen more upper level pitching. He's seen way more reps. He's obviously a little bit older than Kelnick. And personality wise, he doesn't get better than I mean, he's the nicest.
He's awesome.
I love him so much as a human being. I cannot even begin to express it. And so like again, he's another one that like I've been fortunate enough to be friendly with for a few years. And when they traded for him, it was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. And also, how is he ever going to play because of all the other outfielders? And now you're starting to see
memories.
When you're starting to see like, okay, like what's going to happen here. But the crazy thing about it is that like for this year in particular and how good he's looked is that he has the injury 2 games into the season in AAA. And then he was rehabbing and he was basically playing. He basically told me that he was playing in Arizona in extended. And they were like, all right, dude, like we need you in the big leagues tomorrow. Like you're not going back to AAA. So there wasn't like another like, okay, let's ramp back up. Like he played like 2 games in Arizona and then it's like, okay, you're in right now. So, I mean, he's talked a lot about how he's worked on more of a swing path situation that's cut down on the swing and misses like you're talking about. But even from an approach standpoint, I feel like he's been good. But that's something he has exhibited in the minor leagues, right? Like that is something he did have, and it did feel like more of a swing issue. So it's really cool to see him kind of identify that and make those adjustments. Because honestly, like last week, I was kind of thinking like before Lewis got hurt again, and I was thinking, okay, Haniger's not coming back. I was thinking like some sort of Trammel Lewis platoon might be pretty good. I know that Lewis is more of a DH, but like even Trammel in the DH, again, there's a lot of moving parts here, but that felt like something that could be worthwhile if Lewis was going to play in the outfield. Obviously, that seems unlikely at this point, but he does seem like he has a spot on this roster, which is obviously very exciting. My only fear, although again, it seems unlikely now because the depth is so thin, but to me, it was always like, oh, well, he's going to be the one they flip and get traded for, for a time career. But at this point, I don't know for who,
but
I think at this point, actually, they probably trade Mitch, right? Just given the way everything's shaken out, if he's ready, they have people to back him up. He's the guy that somebody else might want, and he's the guy who also might get you something in return. So he's
Mitch
kind of the
I agree with that. But I mean, what do we know? Mitch is not coming back anytime soon. So like, I don't know if they're going to be able to trade him if he comes back in mid-July and plays a week. I mean, but I think they'll probably try to, right? Like, I hate to say this, but I think the Mitch Haniger, he's not sticking around. Like I know we started the season thinking, extend Mitch, and like these injuries have been incredibly unfortunate and are not his fault. But like this is just not, it's not what's going to happen. Like they're going to figure, that's just my sense. So at this point, as I know, if you said this a couple months ago, we're in the off season, like we all want extend Mitch. I get that, but it's just not going to happen. I would be really, really surprised if that happens. So, but at the same time, like to your point, I think they obviously traded for Trammel and he's much younger. And if he's showing these kinds of improvements, then I think they'd rather find a spot for him than find a way to get Mitch back in with his question marks.
It's hard to have this kind of roster, like a young group of, kids. and have guys like Lewis and like to fit all of these people who can't. Haneker isn't great in the field anymore. Like, he used to be able to fake it in center. Now he's just,
No,
like not
he's
happening.
definitely
Kyle Lewis, like we've talked a lot about on the pod, how we basically don't expect, like right now, my expectations are that for a year, he's not playing in the field at all. As far as I'm concerned, I think his days in center are over. So it's hard to like juggle this, and like Jesse Winker can't really play in the outfield. Like he also fakes it, but you can only have so many of these guys. So it does kind of feel like with his contract situation, with his age, with his injuries, Haniger might be the odd man out. I think it's probably what, 6 weeks for a high ankle ish.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound like he's anywhere close. Like, I don't think he's coming back anytime this month or anything. But the thing too is, right, like it will also probably depend where they're at in the standings.
True.
Obviously, if they feel like Haniger's actually back and they're still in it, then like he's going to play. But it feels like Trammel has definitely worked himself into, because the depth is totally gone, right? Like if Lewis can't play the outfield, and Trammel, as far as we can tell, is like perfectly solid and right. He probably isn't as good as Kelnick. That's the other thing about Kelnick, right? Kelnick's proven to be a pretty good right fielder. And so that's, again, that doesn't override striking out 80% of the time, obviously. but that was also a factor. But I think Trammel can be that too. And so if we're dealing with Winker in left and Julio is now, miraculously plus in center, and Trammel can be solid in right, then that's good too. Because I bet Tramel's better in right than Haniger is at this point, especially now coming off another lower body injury. Like he's already so much slower than he was in 18, and there's no way that that's getting any better. And so that's the other thing with that. And then you kind of figuring out this Haniger Lewis who's going to DH more or something. But again, it's just like I have no idea what to expect from them. So if Trammel's here for the long term, if it's a fourth outfielder, if it's a platoon right fielder, if it's a starting right fielder, that makes me super duper happy. How that fits in with Kelnick is a little more complicated, right? If Kelnick can work his way back, obviously as both left-hand hitters, but I still think he definitely has a role on his team, and that's been cool to see.
Yeah, we want more good problems, in terms of how to fit guys together.
These are not luxury. We are not in luxury territory. Okay, to call this but you're totally right though. It is hard to fit these pieces together. But it's not a great place to be considering.
That's how Toro becomes a super utility.
Yes.
A Ben Zobrist type, as some of our beat writers have said.
we all want a Ben Zobrist type in our life, but
we all do.
It's true. Not as easy as it looks. It's not as easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's interesting about Trammel is that I think his ultimate upside kind of looks a little bit like Mitch Haniger. And I actually kind of think that about a bunch of the Mariners outfield prospects, is that a good version of them is probably kind of like Mitch Haniger, plus power, batting kind of 260 and average to maybe just slightly below average in a very short period of time outfield defense. And yeah, that's Mitch Haniger, right? And so if we've replaced Mitch Haniger with Trammel, who is a similar archetype, great. I also think that we need to be extra grateful for how good Julio has turned out to be in the outfield, because without him in center field, our outfield defense might be the worst in the league.
Exactly.
It's not been great.
Well, that's where I thought we were heading. Like, I thought, when they were just going to play Julio out there before we knew he was this fast and this good, I was like, wow, this is going to be bleak. Like, and that's not Julio's fault, right? But it was just like, this is going to be rough if he's flanked by Haniger way slower than he used to be, and Jesse Winker. So no, like you said, it's total game changer.
Yeah, and like especially with Flexen and Marco, like all of these guys, and I'm pulling up I'm trying to find the ball and play percentage, but I'm pretty sure the Mariners rank pretty high. Just having one or two of those pitchers is enough. It's not super ideal to have Jesse Winker running around in left field. They're not bad. They're like league average, but still, it's
Well,
if you
the
have
whole
that outfield, you don't,
Gilbert and Kirby are really changing the complexion of our pitching staff in a way that
Thank
it's pretty
God.
freaking awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, in general, it's still, when you guys, flexing and Marco, it's definitely a big difference. So yeah, man, it's but I don't know how this puzzle is going to fit together. I think the injuries are going to kind of just decide that. And if it means that this is the run for Trammel, then that's great. If Lewis and Haniger really can't play at all, and we're gonna this is it. This is like, again, when they traded for him, I was like, wow, what's it gonna take for Trammel to like get regular playing time? Well,
Right.
it's taken a lot of weird stuff and unfortunate injuries to get him there. But like if he runs with it, then that's awesome. So yeah.
I mean, 2 weeks ago, I was like, I kind of was just like, yeah, org filler, kind of. I also love Taylor Trammel, but like just to speak in terms of like how he fits in, that's what I would have thought. So yeah, it's really encouraging. And yeah, does anyone know that George Kirby has a 23% K minus walk percentage?
We do now.
Where does that rank? Good.
It's got to be, yeah. I would say like 18% and above. I would call good.
Okay. That's good. That's a metric that I like look at, but I don't totally know like the benchmarks, so that's helpful.
It's one of my favorites just because it's so like it becomes reliable or credible faster than most others, and it tells you a lot with a little. So it's only 2 inputs.
He is fantastic. I'm a huge fan. I was skeptical that they were going to rush him this quickly, but then when you watch a pitch, it's like, oh yeah, no, he's obviously one of their 5 best starters.
Yeah, and he's only gotten better. Yeah, that's top 10 actually, 22%.
Top 10.
Yeah. I need to
the MLB, as the worst people in the world say.
I need to drop the it's more like top 15, top 20. But yeah, he's number 11 if you drop the threshold to 20 innings pitched, which is like Nestor Cortez, Giolito, Schoolbowl, who rules now. Yeah, so we will take it. He's just gonna call him a top 10 pitcher.
Yeah, no, he's probably a top 3 pitcher in the world, I would say, at this point. No questions asked.
We'll roll with it.
Honestly, like the thing is, like, I don't know what other topics you guys want. We could get to whatever, but if he was looking this good in spring, which it sounds like he was, I don't really know why he wasn't the first. Like, he made more sense than Brash. Like, I to me, Brash, and I've said this on a few other Mariners things, like Brash to me, best case scenario, like I want him to be, Garrett Whitlock or Tanner Houck or something like that. Like, I think he's a starter. And it seems like they're already transitioning him into that role. And like, I understand coming off last year when he was starting the whole time and he has been starting the whole time, you would want to give him that first crack. But like, man, I just feel like he could be such a weapon. Or like Michael King is another example, right, that we've seen with the Yankees this year. That's just feels like could be such a great way to use him. Whereas Kirby's, he is just so polished. And when you're throwing that many strikes and you're throwing that hard now, like, and you have that many pitches, like, because Brash was just kind of like, it was quite the roller coaster with him. Like, yes, it is some of the nastiest stuff in the world, truly.
Yeah.
But we need strikes at some point.
I've never watched someone pitch before, and it just feel like such an experiment. Like watching him, it felt like they're like, let's throw him out there. Like, regardless of his outcomes, it's just like, let's see what happens. And like,
who it reminded me of actually is when they did this same dance with Brandon Morrow once upon a time. Similar archetype, right? Could throw 98 miles per hour, but like, they couldn't figure out a role for him. Also a guy who did turn into a starter and had a very good season, but could never hang on health wise. So all kinds of
but Morrow, the difference is that like people knew who he was. He was really, he was a big deal the whole time, right? Whereas Brash, it was like, what? Like, this was for Taylor Williams? Like, what are we doing? Like, this is crazy.
Willie, baby. Yeah.
Wasn't he a player to be named later too? Am I wrong about that?
Yeah.
It
They
like
just
I
threw his
remember it
name
like
out
leaked.
there.
It was one of those ones that like leaked, so it was actually named very before later.
Oh, right.
But
Yeah, it was like pretty immediate if I remember correctly.
yes, yes. I love when it's one of my favorite things is when it comes out and the reports are like, so and so is the player to be named later. Later. It's like, no, can't name it yet. Why are you naming the
It's
player to be named
literally not the player to be
later?
named later. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
and we've talked about, on the pod how I think he had an interview with Pitching Ninja, and he said he throws with full intent, like right away, even when he's starting, he's throwing as hard as he can. Like, in terms of his breaking stuff, it's grip it and
right,
rip it, throwing as
right.
hard as he can with his fastball. And it's like, what, in the first couple innings, he was struggling, in his start. So I do wonder, aside from a change in mindset, like what changes. So I think that's the thing that remains to be seen. But I really do think that Whitlock is, Whitlock does have the better command. But I do think that's
Oh,
kind of the role that he ends up kind of taking, is just like a guy that can go multiple innings, guy that maybe can. Well, I actually think that Whitlock is a starter. I love Whitlock.
I know he's kind of moved back into starter role. So,
But in
and I
terms of like a reliever role, yeah.
yeah, and honestly, that's more pressing. Like, I don't. Again, we could transition to whatever you guys want, but like with him, unlike Kelnick, although I guess you could argue they're urgent for any sort of offense with that, but like obviously the bullpen has not been good, and so Brash is, I think, more interesting in terms of how quickly they rush him back. Like what are they trying to see him in the minors?
Yeah.
I'm very curious about that. I bet we see him a lot sooner. Like I imagine if this bullpen is still this shaky, and if Ken Giles is just nowhere to be found, yeah, that's gonna be an issue. So but again, and to me, like that's great. Like fine, I'd rather rush him back.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Oh God, his numbers are not good right now. Brash
In
in
the moment,
AAA.
yeah, no,
not.
I know, and so that's the thing
Oh
where it's
my
like,
gosh.
but the thing is, those are all going to be smaller samples, right? So it's like
Yeah.
with those, I don't know if the raw numbers are going to be as important than like what they can see and what they think they can get in
Process type stuff.
universe. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you just look at it, it's like, oh, he's not ready. But I still feel like he's coming back faster.
Yeah.
I wonder if they don't rush him back to get him to pitch a little bit in the interest of having him be a throw-in on a larger trade at the deadline, because his arm is interesting enough that a team might be willing to take a chance on it. But the Mariners might want to consolidate that for somebody they feel more secure in for this season.
Yes, at the same time, I'm kind of torn on that, because on one hand, your logic is totally reasonable. On the other hand, like I really think they, as up and down as it obviously has been this year, I think they feel like they completely struck gold with him in a way that is not. I cannot imagine flipping it that quickly. Now, maybe it's that you could argue the other way and say we struck gold. There's no way this is real to some degree, or like there's no way he's ever going to stay healthy, or he's going to command this enough. And some other team can say, "Oh my God, he has the best stuff ever," according to Eno Saras. So let's trade for him. Like I'm sure, of course he has. I'm sure he has a ton of trade value, and that's the kind of thing where it's like if you're just drinking like value added, yeah, of course, trading Taylor Williams for him and then flipping him for like a legitimate player is great process. But I think they think he's really special, and they just want to figure out how to make it work. And I generally agree with that. But to your point, in terms of trades, like man, I don't know. Jerry's like, I guess we could talk about the one they just made, but
oh yeah.
Yeah, we should mention that because Mikey is the pitching guru. So, Mikey, I looked him up a little bit, but I kind of honestly couldn't suss out what his role might actually be with the team. But the Mariners have acquired Ryan Borucki. Apologies if I'm pronouncing that wrong. What about him is interesting? Because he was on the verge of being DFA'd. Is that correct? He was traded instead of being DFA'd or outrighted to
he
the
was
Blue Jays
DFA'd.
AAA.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he was in that 10-day window, and yeah, they traded Tyler Keenan for him, who's just like a guy who can't really field, supposed to hit dingers. John Troopin really loves him, I think, probably because he is John Troopin, the player.
Can I just say like 20 seconds on Tyler Keenan?
Yeah,
I was
please do.
super in. I love, dude, raked in the SEC.
Yeah,
I didn't understand why he didn't get more love in the draft. And at the same time, he's 23 and he's not hitting an A ball. So it's like,
right.
like I traded your fourth rounder from 2 years ago for Ryan Borucki doesn't feel great if you just say it that way, but
Mhm.
like I'm fine with it considering how desperately they need a left-hander. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's I just want to say that on Keaton.
No, that's super helpful. I mean, like, I know some things about prospect, but mostly like I have to parrot things that I hear from other people because I don't watch these people. So, and I wish I had more access to like minor league data because I have friends and agencies and who work for teams, and sometimes they'll send me interesting things and I'm like, I want this. I want true media. But anyways, I kind of slapped a JT Chagua kind of comp on him during his time with the Mariners.
A shaggy
Um,
comp.
yeah. Obviously, I don't know how Chagua has done more recently. I know that he struggled when he went to the Rays, which makes sense because um, of the sticky stuff ban or enforcement, I should say. That was around the same time. And yeah, he throws, kind of a sinker with a little bit of seam shifted wake. I'm gonna pull up the numbers now. I don't think it's anything crazy. But if I remember correctly, he gets an added inch of, and this is like a model. It's not, it's not. It's missing some key components, but generally speaking, yeah, the sinker gets an added inch of arm side run. The slider gets over an inch of added depth. Um, so he's got some seam shifted wake stuff going on. Throws a pretty, not really hard nowadays, 95 mile per hour sinker with a slider cutter hybrid or a slider at 87. I think that's a really special pitch. I think that's kind of why I throw that comp on him, because him and Shaggy both throw, the gyro. Um, like Baseball Savant calls it a slider. He thinks cutter. He said that it's kind of a mix, but
Shagua
I
has
think
or
they're gonna. What was that?
Shagua has or Borucki has?
Borucki.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. I don't know about Shaggy.
Shagua's
But
hurt, by the way. So he just hadn't really pitched this year, but he was
really,
still really good last year. Yeah, he just
yeah.
hasn't
Okay.
like won. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think like to me, like okay, what's the role? Like the role is
Mm,
just like give Anthony Misiewicz some freaking help. I mean, like why are we asking him to be? I said this in the offseason. It was just like, why is he the only lefty in the pen? Like he's fine. He's not. I don't think he's bad.
yeah.
He's getting a ton of hate, right? Because he's been a much shakier this year. But it's crazy that he's the only lefty in the bullpen. And I know that, like, oh, the Astros, they barely have any
Yeah.
lefties. It's like, no, man. They gotta have. You have to have more than. And I love Roenis too, but it's like
Yeah.
that's why I was like, get Diekman, get Chafin, get something. Like this is
They had
not
Sean Doolittle.
the plan. They had
Who's
Sean
been very
Doolittle.
good this year.
Well, he's hurt again too. But he has been decent, but he's hurt again too. And then like
Yeah.
they brought in Ryan Buchter right in spring, and then he didn't make the team, so then he opted out. And it was like, so I don't know, man. That's the thing. I just feel like you need something. And Borucki has as recently,
Mhm.
he had that really good, I think it was 2018, his rookie season. And I think he's just been hurt, and he obviously has not transitioned to the bullpen very well.
Yeah.
Because he was more of a starter. But I don't mind it. I mean, if you're seeing something, Mikey, then they're probably seeing something, and like that's fine with me. Like they definitely need some left-handed help in the bullpen, and he's young enough and has something of a pedigree that I think it's a totally solid move.
Yeah, and I once thought that Misiewicz was, the best or second best reliever in the bullpen. I think really, like, I look at his stuff, and now I think he's kind of regressed, and slash I was seeing things that maybe I shouldn't have. So paired with his very suspect politics, which we don't necessarily need to get into. Generally speaking, I don't love to hate on players, but when they're kind of shitheads off the field, it's like, all right, well, I won't necessarily engage, but yeah. But I think he can fill that role, and I think, let's see, with the Mariners, Chagua threw 67.5% sliders. So I will say I think Borucki throws, let's see, I think he's over 50% this year. I think he throws like 60% plus. He's one of the best by slider CSW, like I think top 10 of all sliders. It's not as great by strike percentage. So there might need to be some adjustments in terms of location. One thing that I've noticed with pitchers just across baseball, they kind of do the Matt Brash thing where they throw their breaking stuff, if you're a righty, down and away from righties, or kind of back foot against lefties. A lot of the time that's really not optimal for getting hitters to chase. It's below the zone, and that is kind of the case for Borucki. So I did see that, like, he doesn't really try and locate. He kind of just says, like, he picks a spot, grip and rip it, he throws towards it. But if they can make any adjustments there, it's at least worth a flyer, and I would call the stuff plus on both the slider and sinker. So yeah, he's interesting, and I do think you're right that they need, like, Rowanus is one of my favorite Mariners ever, I think. But they do need like an effective lefty, and I would say they don't really have that right now. So
yeah,
the Mariners
I don't
are known
know
for spamming sliders.
Right, I don't know who else they could. I mean, you mentioned Doolittle. Like, who are the other lefties on bad teams that you could trade for? But I don't. That's why I just. That's why, like, again, this is a creative option that I could see being decent. But we'll see.
Yeah, we will see.
It sounds like the real mistake was not holding on to Lucas Licky all this entire time. Since when did he play for the Mariners? 2008.
Dude, I know.
Like
I still
12.
Can't believe.
Yeah,
it's been a wild time.
I went to. This is a really random story, but
please
remember the MLB fan cave?
Yes, very much.
So
is that like Fan Fest kind of?
No. So this existed for a couple of years, like 10 years ago, or like 8 or 9 years ago, where they had it was essentially like a reality show where they had a bunch of fans living in like these apartments and just watching every game in New York City. This was like an official MLB sponsored thing. But
what the heck?
And then it's kind of wild. And then it kind of turned into what like the Cut For account is on Twitter. Like it used the MLB Fan Cave Twitter account essentially was that before. Anyway, so Jake and I got to go to the MLB Fan Cave, the actual place, in 2014. I think it was 2014. I think it was like the summer of 2014. And in the basement of it, they had just like an unbelievable amount of random ass memorabilia. And for some reason in there, they had a signed Lucas Licky ball. And I don't, again, in 2014, right? So 2014, this was after he was like solid in 12 and 13, and then bad and not on the team basically by the end of 2015. But for some reason, there was a Lucas Licky signed ball, and I was like, "Can I have this?" And they're like, "Yeah." I mean, what? Who else?
No way.
Priceless artifacts.
I have it. I have it here somewhere. But again, then he shows up on the Yankees. I'm like, "Are you serious? Is this ball worth something now?"
He's been good for like a while now. So yeah,
he's been money. So I cannot believe he's actually been pretty poopy this year. But last year
was it last? Okay, his mom actually. So I actually got started around the same time that you and Jake did, blogging about the Mariners with my little blog that no one read. So I think that was in 2014 we started with one of my pals, and I think I've I was a kid then, so I've really changed the way that I talk about players. Like I said, unless they're shitheads, unless they kind of deserve it. I generally, don't like to speak ill of players, but I think I said something along the lines of like, Lucas Licky sucks. And his mom replied to me and was like, "Hey, that's mean." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." But I was also like, he could be better. um, so yeah, I'm really happy. I'm happy to see him.
That's crazy that he was the one you chose to.
Right.
On.
Yeah. But yeah, that actually happened with Ben Gamel, too. I wrote an article about him, which some of my like pitcherless colleagues still give me grief for, but I think I wrote, "No way."
And the best part is like, there's like a thing that says Lucas Litke, because like otherwise you might even look at it like, who?
That is Yeah, you're
Lucas Litke, 44.
We're gonna have to screen cap that. Yeah, Ben Gamel's mom also interacted with. Oh, let's go. With an article I wrote. It was called "Ben Gamel does and does not look like Christian Yelich," and it was a positive article. I was like, he's kind of mimicking the mechanics. He's kind of optimizing some pull side power. And I wrote very briefly that like he's not the greatest defensive fielder, and his mom was like, "Not a good fielder." And I was like, Ben Gamel's mom, I just wrote a very glowing piece about your son.
You are getting the attention of the moms. You're doing it right. Don't think that that's a bad thing. Okay, like honestly, that means that people have their Google alerts set up.
Is that a thing?
Oh yeah, are you kidding me?
That's how. Okay, I'm gonna have to set up some Google alerts for.
I hate to break it to you, but they're not necessarily just browsing the blogs. They're just.
I don't know, like Stroman.
It's basically like passive Twitter searching your own name, right?
Okay. Because Stroman does do that.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, that's incredible. That's a great story. So shout out Lucas Litke.
Yeah, shout out to Lucas Litke and Ben Gamel's moms.
Oh man,
thank you for reading my tweets and my articles.
I'm glad I brought up Lucas. I didn't. That was a good tangent. Memories. But while we're talking about the bullpen, I do want to talk about Steckenrider, because I think his downturn in performance and ultimately his demotion is one of the major disappointments of the season, frankly. And when we're looking at why the bullpen hasn't been able to hold leads, his role being completely fungible and gone at this point essentially is one of the big reasons why they've lost a couple really crucial games. What happened to him? And obviously he didn't look right sometime at the end of last year. His velocity was down a little bit. The strikeouts came down, but he's been hit really hard in terms of home runs and just general slugging off of him this year. What's going on? And in addition to that, is there any hope for him to come back and be a piece of this bullpen later this year?
Who do you want to hear from?
I want to hear.
We've talked.
No. I want to hear from you, sir, because I feel like you are better equipped to answer this as someone who I believe has been on the record as optimistic about Mr. Steckenrider at points.
Yeah. What did I write?
So I would love to know your. And I don't mean this like explain yourself. I mean this is like a
explain yourself.
I mean this as like a you've looked at this closer than I have. So please.
Yeah.
I will say that I was not as optimistic coming into this year, but I was not expecting, like, coming into this year I was like, there's no way he can be the closer. Like, I know he was closing games last year. I was like, no shot. Like, that is not a good idea. But I also was like, if he's, and this is when I was like, oh, Giles is coming, Munoz is going to be amazing, Castillo is going to be better, blah 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 blah. It was like, second round we'll just throw the 6th to the 7th, and that'll be great. And obviously Seawald, whatever. And instead it was just like,
how dare you?
He'll close, and then he stunk. So go ahead.
Yeah.
Please.
Let's see. Yeah, I forgot what the piece I wrote was. I think it was something along the lines of like, he was legit. He may be legit. I think I've kind of been wondering the same, because some of his, like, so one beef, I guess, that I have with people is that, we talk about some statistics and not very nuanced ways. One is, I just wrote that article. I don't know if you saw it, Jordan, but about seam shifted wake and how people, in talking about seam shifted wake, it's like people just cite axis deviation. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. That's what's available to us. As I wrote about, that's not necessarily not always a great way to talk about seam shifted wake. Another is induced vertical break, which essentially is just like looking at how much, if you're talking about it with fastballs, it's like how much fastball ride does a pitcher get. With Paul Sewald, like, I don't have his numbers pulled up. His is probably 13, 14, 15 inches. That means it's a dead ball fastball. That means it's not supposed to be good. It's obviously a very good pitch. Steck is different in that he has a plus IVB, and it's actually gotten better this year. But the thing about Steck is that, and pitchers in general, when you throw from a really vertical slot, and I wish this is why it's nice having friends who are smarter than you, is that the higher slot that you throw out of, the better your IVB needs to be for your pitch to play well. Like Chris Flexen throws out of a very high slot, very good IVB, like it's probably around 20, but throws one of the steepest fastballs by vertical approach angle in baseball, which means, it plays more like a sinker. So it's kind of the same thing for Steck. And so he's raised his arm slot a touch, has also raised his IVB. I think it's mostly, so actually in thinking about it, I'm kind of working through this now. I think he probably raised his arm slot, and now his secondaries are playing differently. Like I think his curveball was a much more usable pitch last year, and I thought, his best secondary, I actually kind of think it's his changeup now. I think he's having a tougher time commanding it because he's getting more he gets like pretty 12-6 action on it. Now he's actually getting like arm side movement, and I think that's probably pretty tough to command. So last year I would say he had 3 usable, solid pitches, and I wrote about how, like, part of the reason why he's so good is that he's able to induce weak contact. Like, that's what makes him special, is he commands his fastball really well, throws them in spots where, guys will pop it up. I don't think he's done that as much this year, and I think his really, like, he's just become a little easier to pick up, because he has less that hitters have to look for. So I think it's kind of a command thing, and I think it can probably be tidied up by maybe getting his arm slot back to where it was. So TLDR, really good fastball, changeup, and curveball mixed in. Now he's pretty much fastball, changeup with some curveballs sprinkled in that haven't been very effective.
Well, I was going to say too, yeah, if you just look at the pitch mix, and I don't know if they call it a curveball or a slider, but it does. Well, so last year was weird because and I remember writing about this in the for his comment for the BP annual, which was basically like he was not a changeup guy at all before last year,
right?
Like whatsoever. And then suddenly he was throwing it all the time, and it was working. And it was like, whoa, what is this weird like fastball changeup, which you just don't see a lot of fastball changeup relievers, right? That's just not normally what you see. And then it seems like, I can't speak as much to the arm slot stuff, but it seems like this year it was like leaning even heavier into that. And now it's just not as effective as it was. And so that's kind of what I was seeing. But I mean, and then to your question, Evan, like, right, what does he make his way back? I mean, honestly, I think it's going to kind of depend more on how the rest of these guys that we were not as used to last year are going to perform. And that's Murfee and Festa and Swanson.
I love them.
Because Swanson was awesome.
Oh, it's crazy.
Wow. Right? Like, that was a really stunning development. Murfee, and I know you mentioned Festa, we can talk about him too, but like, and I'm sure whatever, we've all picked up on this. And it's like, people are like, oh, because Murphy's numbers are great. And it's like, oh, if they found another Seawald. It's like, he's literally just doing exactly what Seawald. Like, they're too, I'm sure you've noticed this, Mikey, but like, their release points are so similar and so unlike any other release points in the league. Like, there's no, if you look at all the plots, all the release points in baseball, Murphy and Sewald are right next to each other and there's no one else really that close, which is fascinating to think. It's like, okay, let's just do this again. Like they don't throw that hard. It worked for Sewald, so let's just do it for Murphy. Which I kind of love that, but it is also goofy because it's like, why would we have two of the exact same reliever in the bullpen? It's like, well, if they're good, sure, it works out. So I just think that's also super interesting.
It is funny. We have a lot of the like low slot, kind of fastball slider guys, but like, I think that's kind of the wave right now is the sliders that sweep a ton and the, with a hard fastball. I actually didn't think about that. I know that, he's...
Yeah, I'll let me say, I'll pull up the chart and I'll send it to you. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Like I know that he throws out of he's literally from the side. But Sewald's interesting because he's, I think, two standard deviations lower than league average in terms of arm release point, and one standard deviation to the side. So he creates a really weird release point, and I'm sure Penn Murfee is out there. I'm trying to pull up kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I'll get it up, I think. But yeah, man. So that's those are the relievers that have just been in terms of like if Steck's gonna come back, is like, are they like if those guys are still generally getting it done, they're not going to rush. He's certainly not getting back into high leverage anytime soon. But yeah, I think that's really what's going to determine it, I would say. And like, I don't know.
You're right. They're right next to each other. And Johan, rip, is pretty close too.
Very interesting.
I mean, I wrote that article that was saying like last year, Johan Ramirez is like doing the Paul Sewald thing, and you got to be able to command it somewhat, and I think I was really
still bummed they traded him. I would have rather had him still around and figuring that out.
Just let him get some cleanup innings. I don't know. People were really hard on him in the Lookout Landing Slack.
I've been maybe it's because he pitched for Aguilas and I was like, this is my guy. But
that's my boy. Yeah.
I don't know. Has he pitched at all for Cleveland? I assume not. But I've enjoyed Johan.
Just if he hasn't been good, just don't tell me if he hasn't pitched, because I really do adore Johan.
He got scapegoated a little bit just because the team actually collapsed when he was that bad. You know what I mean? Every once in a while, like a convergence of events is just the team is in free fall and somebody happens to be at the forefront of it. And that was the situation. I think the entire fan base has chilled out a little bit since the Mariners went on that particularly bad spell. But in the interest of time, I think I want to talk about, we're going to skip the trade discussion because we could talk about that for hours. And I think we're mostly just going over players that I picked off of bad teams that are potentially like available. But let's talk about, let's talk about Robbie Ray, because I really want to know what Jordan thinks, because Mikey and Anders and I have been talking about him all year on this pod. He's essentially been the main character of this pod because we have a pitching focus and because his results have been so peculiar. But Jordan, I'm wondering, how do you think he's actually performed? Because there are some metrics that say, hey, he's kind of gotten the short end of the stick. The results are worse than the process, and that he's actually looked. Some of the velocity, but not all of it, has come back. But he continues to be hurt by the long ball, which, is part of his mix in his repertoire anyway. He's always given up home runs. But it just seems to have been worse this year than average. What's your read on it? Can we expect him to be better the rest of the year? Does it feel like we're already in albatross territory going forward? Kind of. What do you think of this so far?
So again, like I cannot do as deep of a dive on pitch mix and what's working compared to last year and as Mikey can.
Nonsense.
But like, no, it's just a fact. I'm not just being nice to you. That said, like, kind of off of what I just was saying earlier about Steck, right? So what do we know about Robbie Ray? He's got this awesome slider. Like, cool. Now he's throwing, he's throwing at 42% of the time this year, up from 30%, 31%. And it feels like now he's just like a 2-pitch guy. Not that he was throwing the curveball and changeup that much last year, but like that ain't working. And I don't know who was deciding that you were. And I know he's mostly been that. He won a Cy Young almost throwing just a ton of sliders last year too. Um, but it has been a really, to your point, peculiar results. I will say, first of all, the velo stuff honestly didn't concern me that much. Like, I think we just saw that with guys like, and as far as we know, he's healthy. And if anything, Robbie Ray has been freaking durable as hell his whole career. And he has still given this team a ton of innings this year, too, which has been truly valuable for a team that the bullpen has not been good, right? And so, like, obviously, he's looked nothing like the Cy Young that they thought they were signing. But I'm look, obviously it was full panic mode, and he has still been objectively disappointing. But I would just say that I don't think, like, he is not my biggest concern. As weird as that is, I guess, to say. What is my biggest concern? That's a good question. I'm not sure. I guess it's all the injuries and all the offense being up and down and all this, whatever stuff like that. But in the bullpen, he's not my biggest concern because he's still giving them innings. The stuff is still pretty good. He's still striking out like the strikeouts have gone up more lately. But man, he's just not, like, bad innings are just unraveling way worse than they were at any point last year, right? Like, I mean, but also when you compare, it was kind of more in line with his career up until last season, right? Where it was like flashes of brilliance, but then like stuff would just unravel in a hurry. You look at stuff like his, left on base rate last year was 90%, which is absurd, not sustainable at all, and completely 20% higher than basically every other year of his career, at least 10% higher. And so, like, that coming down, the way that Robbie Ray pitches, and when the walks are now not miraculously just completely gone the way they were last year, obviously I really do believe he's still a good pitcher, but last year was such an insane career season that I was not expecting him to repeat under any circumstance. And so I would consider this year to be thus far disappointing, and I'm not like total panic mode, and like he's not the problem. Like, I'm glad they spent money on him. Would I have preferred Gossman? Yes, I said that all along, right? And I think they probably tried to get Gossman too, And that's the other thing, is there's things where it's like we can't decide. Like, I've seen reports where it's just like, yeah, they gave Gossman the same offer and he didn't, or close to the same offer, and he wanted to go to Toronto. Like, that shit happens, right? We've seen a lot of people talk about, it's like sometimes guys just don't want to come to Seattle, and that happens. And so, we can play a lot of what ifs, and so he has obviously been disappointing, but I'm still cautiously optimistic that he can still be a good, useful part of this team, which I know that is still disappointing for a lot of people, but I'm just not that super panicked because it's been a lot of weird shit that's been going on with him. Like, if you like take, it's just like individual disaster innings, right? And so I know it's always kind of cheap to be like, oh, we take those out, his ERA is 0. It's like, okay, I know it's not that simple, but it really is kind of to an extreme degree with him. So that's my general Robbie Ray take. Like, yes, I'm frustrated too, but I don't watch him and I think like he is a total disaster. I just think like, wow, this is just not going well in the way that a lot of things have just not been going well. In a way that, like, when you look at the overall offensive numbers, it's like, why is this offense so crappy? Like, they're not this bad. It's the same kind of thing. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at with Robbie Ray.
With Ray, I listened to Jerry talk about him this week, and I listened to Shannon do an interview, and they both went over him quite a bit. And I'll be honest, I wasn't that intrigued by what I heard. Shannon in particular said that Ray has had focus lapses, which is not a thing you like to hear. It's just generally not a phrasing you hear anyone discuss about pitchers like that. But both her and Jerry, and really Scott too, and he's mentioned it, have kind of been at a loss for what's going on with Ray. And I don't feel encouraged by the fact that it seems like the people who are in charge of this don't know how to fix it. I agree generally with the sentiment that he hasn't been as bad as it sort of seems. And even the metrics would back that up, that he's been an above average pitcher purely on the basis of the fact that, like you said, he's incredibly durable. He throws tons of innings. The Mariners need him to throw tons of innings, whether or not he's going to be very good. So it's kind of a moot point whether or not he's bad at all, because he's going to be there, right? Like, they're not replacing him. But yeah, it is a little disappointing that we are this soon into this 5-year experiment and we are already kind of at a loss for answers. It's not ideal. But the flip side of that, obviously, is that Logan Gilbert and George Kirby have been so good and taken so much of the pressure off of him to just be the absolute Cy Young best pitcher on the team, because there's some love to go around and the team is doing okay aside from that. So
So it's that. I totally agree with you. It's that, and it's like, to your point about the way that they're talking about him, I think that on one hand it's like, oh, they're concerned not to fix how to fix him, but to me it's more, it's just like, dude, you can't. That Robbie Ray season last year was clearly a step forward, but that was not representative at all. And so, like, if that is what we were expecting, yeah, you were going to be let down almost certainly. And so, yeah, but also don't sign pitchers ever. I mean, like, I'm not even thinking about the five. Like, of course, it's easy to look at any pitcher's contract and be like, this is a disaster. Like, hello, Steven Strasburg, right? Like, there's plenty of examples of that. What I'm focused on right now is like this year, right? How can we get him back to a point where it's like he is contributing to this team being good in some way? And as long as he's throwing solid 5 and 6 innings, that's still a valuable thing to have. And I know, again, the standard should be higher than that. But that's fine. Like, that can still be useful. It's just like, now, like, is he the best pitcher on the team the way they are paying him the way that he should be? Probably not. But I think that says more about Gilbert and Kirby. Gilbert in particular. Kirby.
Do y'all want to hear something sad?
Please. Let's look. Yeah, I don't know. Why not? Let's get sad.
All right. So I guess the top 2 pitchers in MLB and strike percentage.
Oh, I know what this is going to be. One of them is Nestor Cortez Jr., who is on the Mariners.
No, he's close.
Oh, no. Okay.
Sorry,
I ruined your sad fun fact. Go ahead. I was like,
no, it's fun.
Yeah, go ahead.
Number 1 is Gausman, who, in hindsight, I do feel kind of silly about. Can I say this? So I tweeted, like, around the time that we were linked to him, like, Gausman, like, that's not going to age well. And a player DM'd me and was like,
but hey, it still might not age well. Remember, pitcher.
That's true. This is true.
But we're talking about 2 months into the beginning of these contracts, so let's just make sure you realize what we're talking about, right? But
yes. But he has changed. Like he's tweeted some stuff and he's been better. But a player DM'd me and was like, what don't you like about Gausman? And I was like, I don't like. I think his fastball shape's not that good. He's splitter dependent, and that's not generally, it's a pitch that, the kind of cliche is it goes in and out. It's kind of hard to command. Yep. It's kind of silly to say that when, you're talking about Kevin Gausman. Like, he's been doing this for, I don't know, since 3 years now, 4 years now, going on 4 years. So I actually think it was always going to, as long as he held the velo, I think he was always going to be pretty good, because even if he loses velo, he loses spin, the way that a splitter and really the fastball, work and interact with each other is that they interact with each other. So the splitter is always playing off the fastball. So long as he's not like throwing 92 for 4 years, I think that was always kind of the right move, which feels bad.
Who's number 2 on the list?
It's someone that we, at least me and Anders, were very pro bringing back. I don't remember what you thought, Evan. I think you were
Tyler Anderson. No, I was pro. Anderson. We all wanted Tyler Anderson.
Tyler Anderson has his fastball ride back. He has, I don't actually know about spin. I don't know how he got the fastball ride back. I imagine he got spin back, and that's probably because I think pitchers are figuring out how to get sticky stuff back on the ball, and one way or another. Getting a little more creative. Let's pull up spin rate. Yeah.
No, I mean, like, that one is. Oh man! And then of course,
that was a no-brainer. That was like Taiwan the year before. It was like we just should have bit the bullet and paid the money and had the depth.
And he would have been in the available for so long. It wasn't even like someone scooped him up, like with like the way that like Andrew Heaney got signed like immediately by the Dodgers. Like, it's not like the Dodgers signed him immediately, right? Like, didn't he not sign until like March or February or late February?
He was definitely out there for a while.
Yeah. You're muted, Mikey, I think.
Oops.
Yeah, were you saying something about the great Tyler Anderson?
Yeah, he's it's interesting. Like he's technically his main pitch is a changeup, like by 0.3%. So he's Brian Menendez wrote an article at BP about his new changeup. He, I don't think it was necessarily a great pitch before, but he added a ton of depth to it. And I think not only is like his fastball ride up last time I checked on Brooks, but he's getting more depth on his changeup. So it's in a vacuum, his fastball is better, his changeup is better, which only means that the two of them are just bananas now. So even if this wasn't the case, even if he didn't reshape the changeup, I think he's just like a good enough depth piece.
Well,
and
again,
it's disappointing.
And again, like, why didn't they sign him? Because I mean, maybe they didn't want to pay him whatever he got, $8 million or $7 million or whatever it was. It was less than that. I don't know.
It's probably less.
Maybe it was that, but it was also, we believe in Matt Brash and George Kirby, right? That's really why they didn't, because 4 rotation spots were 100% taken, and they were like, yeah, we want Brash and Kirby will be ready. And so from there, but like, yeah, you want depth because the pitchers are probably going. That's by the way, that is the weird thing about this team, all the injuries on the bullpen and the pitching and the position player group is like they have built what looks to be, knocking on every piece of wood in my apartment.
Please do.
Quite a durable pitching staff. When you look at Flexen and Marco and obviously Robbie Ray, and what I think Gilbert will be, like, it's pretty, like, these guys are going to be there. So,
but like,
no, you're right. Like we don't know what it is. And again, like when you're saying about Tyler Anderson, like after they had brought him back, was it a situation, or after they, in the offseason, was it a situation where it was like, he can be better? Because when you go back and it's so funny. Like when you think about how they talked about Tyler Anderson last year down the stretch, they were like, this guy saved our season. Like he's brought us all kinds of incredible stability. And like, I remember like the last week, I remember pulling up his BRF page and being like, this guy really? Like, it's like 4.5. I was like, why are we celebrating this guy so much?
It was a really strange thing.
Like, I thought he made a lot of sense I was in favor of bringing him back too, not necessarily as vigorously, but yeah, man, it's just so funny.
We were full vigor, all right.
I think to your point too about how they had 4 rotation spots filled. What was stopping them from doing this 6-man rotation? George Kirby threw 70 innings all of last year, and he is currently in a rotation, and it's great. Well, I love watching Kirby pitch right now, but
is the other pitchers in it? Like Robbie Ray was not signing up for that shit.
True.
It also
that's
literally it has not been said that Tyler Anderson is literally pitching for the Dodgers in the Dodgers rotation. Like if he can fit,
Exactly.
I know that they did lose, like, I don't even remember which pitchers. One is he who must not be named, but if he can pitch for maybe the World Series champions this year, like,
is still hurt too.
Yeah.
And Kershaw is obviously always hurt, right? So it's like they had more guys where it was like someone's going down. so I think that's Bueller.
Heaney. But like this.
You're right. You're totally right.
What I say about a lot about the Mariners and like depth is that the Dodgers, like, I know that we're not the Dodgers, but the Dodgers are good because a player gets hurt and like Gavin Lux or someone steps up. The Mariners don't have that. We don't have hardly any luxuries, but we should construct our rosters in which, like, we optimally, we have backup plans and like. Are we going to see Darren McCacken this year? Because we might.
Asher Wojciechowski.
No, we're going to see.
Oh God.
Who's the other guy that's like starting in Tacoma right now?
Pull this up. There's a
Tommy Malone.
They have some.
Tommy Malone has a below 1 ERA in Tacoma. He might be our ace in the hole.
Talk about changeup guys.
Oh no, dude, Daniel Ponce de Leon. That's who it was.
He's fun.
Tommy Malone is down there too. I kind of like Patrick Weigel. I think he's going to come up.
It's like a suicide squad of like castaways from
know.
different teams.
Yo, remember Justice Sheffield?
I do
No.
remember. Actually, I feel like so on Brooks, like I pulled up player cards, and I don't know why. This is very random. One of the most searched ones right now on Brooks, like I don't know what happened, but Jared Saltalamacchia.
Did he
Can
retire?
anyone make that make sense? I don't know.
That would be my only guess. I have no idea.
Maybe he's coming back as a pitcher.
It's super weird. It's super funny
Yeah.
though. Wow.
Anyways,
yeah,
yeah,
Patrick
like-
Weigel is definitely coming up at some point. I'm just calling that.
Or maybe it's just evergreen. I don't know if these change.
It's also possible.
I mean, yeah, but yeah, like I think it just made way too much sense, and now it makes me. What if we had Kevin Gossman and Tyler Anderson in this rotation? I know it's like whatever, but
We'd be ahead of the Angels right now.
Yes.
we didn't talk about that.
Should we talk about the Angels?
Maybe we should. Yeah, we should finish on that.
Our dramatic conclusion is talking.
You want to
about
finish on
Yeah.
the Angels?
All right, here's
I
what I'll
think so.
say about the Angels. The gravitational pull of them to 500 is greater than gravity itself. And just when you think, I remember 9 games ago, I looked at
10
the
games
standings, I was
ago.
like, wow, Angels. 10
Yeah.
games, like, wow, look at those Angels. Look at everyone's like, it's happening. They're doing it. Look at Taylor Ward. Oh my God.
You should look at the standings more often. Is that all?
I was
it
like,
takes?
just no. Well, I know. I was like, just wait. And at that point, I was like, by the end of June, things will be back to normal. Little did I know, by the beginning of June, things were back to normal.
I mean,
now look, Angels fans listening to this, aka none of you, you're like, hey, you losers, you haven't won shit. It's like, that's true.
that
But
is
at
very
least
true.
we've had a winning season in the last
Wow.
7 years.
Really? It's been 7 years?
They've been bad a long time.
Am I exaggerating?
I don't think so. They have
I'm
been in
pretty
the
sure
playoffs.
they had the longest non-winning season streak record in baseball. So
That's pretty bananas.
yeah, they are. I think you tweeted this, Mikey. Like, I'm just not worried about them. I'm just truly not in any way. They have not had a winning season since 2015. So yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about them. Their team is also flawed. But I think they could end up in a similar place, 50 games behind Houston.
Right.
So we'll be right there with you, Angels fans. We'll be looking up at Houston once again.
Like,
but
they're like the makeup of their rotation is so not. And again, you could say the same thing about their number 2 pitcher right now. And I know that it's because of the way that injuries have happened, whatever. Chase Silseth. Does anyone know who that is? Has
I
anyone heard of
cannot
him?
say
in
that I
college
do.
a year ago. He was in college a year ago. I mean, how is
wild.
Michael Lorenzen leading them in innings?
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, that's incredible. That's an incredible. Like, they were like, "Hey, Reds reliever, you're our number 1 starter." It's like, oh, all right, sounds good.
And like
It's
their
interesting point.
peripherals, they're not that great. Like Ohtani obviously has been great. He's also given up a lot of home runs, and like his ERA minus is
Also,
above
like
100.
Syndergaard is now just like a number 4 like strike throwing ground ball artist. Like, his
It's
velo
so
is
weird.
not coming back. He
No,
hasn't thrown
it's
a
not.
ball 97 the whole year. Like, it's over.
Really?
Yeah. Like,
Wow.
him and Verlander, who I was watching super closely, I wrote about them coming into the year, like, guys coming off full years of TJ, or guys basically entering a season fully, and I know Syndergaard pitched 1 inning at the end of last year for no reason because the Mets are weird. But like, I thought, I was like, what is this going to look like? And I totally would have bet on Verlander because he's a freak and he's a Hall of Famer. Whereas Syndergaard, it's like, dude, if you're not throwing 100 anymore, like, we weren't really getting strikeouts before, but now he's at what? He's
94.
He's at 6 Ks per 9.
It's not good.
Like,
It's
and
really,
he's
really
making
not
$18 million, like, he was like that was a big deal. I'm like, this is not how this was going to work. And so sure, if Taylor Ward is an all-star, which even with immense regression, he certainly will be at this point. Rendon's always hurt, and Marsh and Adele haven't obviously become anything. And Ohtani is merely good offensively this year. And that's really all it takes to get him back to 500.
Rendon is literally hurt right now, right?
Yep.
Yep, he had a wrist flare up, and where there's flares and sparks, there's a fire, and the Angels are burning down. So it's all going according to plan.
And look,
I'm gonna cherry pick this. Like, guess how many pitchers they have starting pitchers they have above a 12% strikeout minus walk percentage. Above.
Probably.
3.
Are we including relievers?
Starters.
1.
3.
They have 1.
1,
And
right?
12 is not
Sandoval's
good.
probably close.
He's 11.9, so like it's a hell of a cherry pick.
But like the Sandoval breakout pick, I was like, I mean, I guess. Like the problem, okay, this is the other thing. My distaste for the Angels as a Mariners fan is probably the most antithetical thing to essentially everything else I do in baseball, which is like promote the sport and like want to see baseball and MLB flourish, right? The number one thing that the average baseball fan wants to see is the Angels be good. Truly. Like that is so far up the list. Is Mike Trout and the Angels and Shohei Ohtani be good? It is the one thing where I'm like, nah. I'm just like, sorry. Like, 1, I follow them closely enough to know it's not going to happen. And 2, I'm a Mariners fan. So sorry about it.
We all got to have our vices, you know?
But honestly, it's like it's everyone else it wants to see and I'm like, it's not happening. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And it sucks. It is bad. It is objectively bad for baseball. It is truly it is bad, right? And so after that hot start and everyone was getting excited again, I was like, well, it had to happen at some point. And then I was like, no, it didn't.
They're gonna let you
No,
go.
it didn't. We're fine.
I should clarify though. It's not a bad thing that the Angels are bad. It's a bad thing that 2 of the most iconic players in the sport happen to play for one of the worst run teams in all of professional
and 3
sports.
now with Ward. So it's like,
True.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you
It's
and Jimmy
literally-
Hergen? So that's 4. So I just like, man, it's like, can you believe Aaron Loop doesn't still have a 0 ERA with the Angels? It's like stunning development.
I can't even believe Aaron Loop is still a baseball player.
Dude, Reed Detmers threw a no-hitter and his numbers are still like how do you do that, man? Like, oh my goodness.
I don't love him.
Dude, they literally were
suck.
like, Tyler Wade, Andrew Velazquez, that's our shortstop. We will.
Who did they had Simba last year, yeah?
I thought they were gonna sign Trevor Story. Yeah, they had Simmons. They're gonna sign Trey Turner this winter. And they will still be on 500. Yeah. So
they will sign a big
how
name free agent every other year until the end of time, and it will never save them.
Yeah.
They really haven't stopped.
No, they're like they well, again, like Artie Moreno would rather like give $1 billion to a player than like pay minor leaguers or pay his own employees. So it's like it's either $100 million contract, nothing, right? We're not. That's what we're spending on.
all in. They're all in.
Anyway, so there we go. There's our Angels slander.
Yeah,
That's
I don't know.
Good vibes to end on.
Is Taylor Ward actually good too? Like, it seems like
there's no way he's
an above average hitter.
There's no way he's bad. He's clearly good. Is he 1,000 OPS good? I'm gonna take the under. And now he's hurt. So
I know. Oh, is he? I know that Dan Szymborski. I remember reading I used to really religiously read Fangraphs chats, and I've kind of stopped. But I'm really bad about reading baseball stuff. As a writer, my ratio is probably 10-1, like writing to read. I just bump my homie stuff. But there's this paradox where people kind of say like they feel better about the 850 OPS hitter when the hitter's been like an 800 OPS, player, than someone who's like a 1200 OPS hitter in a small sample, because it's like it feels more realistic. But it's like, no, but he's been better. Like he has a 213 WRC plus, so it's real. Like his xWOBA is 427. So yeah, I think you're right. Like he is a legitimate hitter. But
that's the other thing. It's so amazing. It's like they figured out Jared Walsh too, who's also good. Yeah. Jared Walsh is also good. Oh my god.
We need to do that with a hitter. We do.
Yeah,
And we
why haven't they
really.
tried that? Why haven't they just made a bad player good?
Yeah, we don't
And
really
why did
have
they
a
press
single
that
offensive
button?
success story. Not at all. I mean, Ty France, but Ty France could hit long before he
Ty
got
France
here.
has raked since he was 3 years old. The
True.
only one that the most, honestly, it's the most bullshit. Well, this is good. Mariners hate here. The way they were talking about Dylan Moore after 2020 was the most irresponsible. 39 games in front of 0 people. And it was like, they literally said, Mariners front office, if you're listening to this is the most absurd thing that's ever been said publicly. They literally said, Justin Hollander, who seems like a very smart, good general manager.
Literally a Dipoto clone. I don't know if you ever heard 100%. Him talk.
And I'm mostly pro Jerry, okay? They were Jerry literally on the podcast being like, we found our Josh Donaldson. I'm like, bro.
Oh.
Shut the F up.
Really? I don't know remember saying that.
That is on the record. I could find you the podcast episode where Justin Hollander was like, we found our Josh Donaldson. Dylan Moore, 39 games. What are we talking about?
I did,
and they gave him the second base job too after that.
Well, here's the problem. I don't even dislike Dylan Moore that much. I'm just like, what are we talking about?
What are we doing here?
Crazy. Like, that is not exactly. So anyway.
I can
Jerry, it's fine.
And,
Jerry
and Jake
listening,
Mailhot did too. Yeah. JP, I think might be an example.
Hey, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Why is he taking credit for that?
I don't know if it's real, but we'll see.
I like JP. JP, what a guy.
Anything else for today, or should we wrap? We're at about an hour and a half here.
No. We could literally do this all day, I think.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Easily.
That's why we have to cut it off.
Honestly, Anders is back next week, but it is I feel like we should just have a huge just slate of people and our wait, I said 150. That would be a lot. Our 50th episode as It's Never Sunny in Seattle. If you're not busy, maybe we'll just have you back next week and just round.
Possibly. I will be in Omaha, Nebraska. But if you, let me know. Again, this is fun. I always love doing this. It's always fun talking to people that are watching the same silly team. So
and more roster baiting and trade stuff next week too. So
talk about some guys reminiscing about Lucas Licky and Nestor Cortez and other relievers of a bygone era that are good with other teams still. Yusmeiro Petina's still kicking around somewhere.
Yo Ervis Medina.
Yeah,
we love to remember some guys. But before we go, do y'all remember when I think Alisei Ramirez, I think he got buckled by Yo Ervis maybe 2 times, and also Tom Wilhelmsen. I don't know if I remember. I'll have to.
Yeah. Against the White Sox, I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Medina was good, man. I was in on Medina.
He was.
He was no Archimedes Caminero, but he was something.
But who was really?
Nobody is. Yeah, Archimedes is just such a good name. You're not going to top that. If you're named Archimedes and you throw 100 miles an hour, like that's pretty cool. So
that's 80 grade.
It was probably one of the worst 100 miles an hour I've ever seen. But that said,
does he still pitch in?
He was in Japan.
Korean baseball.
He was in Japan. I don't know him and Thiago Vieira, one of the brightest. Spirits.
Oh my god! Wow.
But I don't know.
We really are remembering some guys.
Yeah, we're scraping the barrel
again. Hey, but shout out Lucas Licky.
Yeah. Do you wanna? I'm screen capping this. Oh shit! Yeah. Wait, do it one more time.
Yeah, I got you.
Oh yeah. It's kind of blurry. It's fine. We'll make it work. Evan, you're very blurry.
Everyone knows what Lucas Litke's autograph looks like. So.
Oh yeah, totally. Well-known professional baseball player, Lucas Licky.
I mean,
anyways,
yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go watch 12 hours of college baseball. And maybe the Mariners.
Do you want to plug? What you're doing lately?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
We need the barbecue podcast.
The Barbacast. Here, I'll break some news here.
Let's go.
A little breaking news. It might be coming back. We'll see.
It might be.
Not.
Is it? Is it might be coming back at the Ringer or might be somewhere else?
0% at the Ringer. That I can tell you. That is a fact, and I think we've been very clear about that.
Okay.
But some version of Jake and Jordan talking about baseball, talking about Major League Baseball, may return in the near future. For now, you can read our work at Fox Sports, foxsports.com, Fox Sports app. Yeah. Download that. Add the Mariners to your favorites, because then I get to write about the Mariners more. That's kind of how that works.
There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, if you're listening to this, if you have read my Ty France piece from a couple weeks ago, I think you'll enjoy that. But other than that, yeah, Fox Sports, Cespedes Barbecue on Twitter, and we're Twitter. We don't use other socials. Yeah, and then college baseball. Also, we're all about college baseball. We have a D1 baseball podcast on the D1 Baseball Podcast Network. You should check out. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But that's me. But I'm watching the Mariners just like you guys. So we're all just getting through it. We're all just getting through it. M's today, we got, I don't know when this episode's going up, but we got the ultimate ace off, George Kirby against Martin Perez. So
let's go.
It's going to be a good game.
Maybe they will win 3 games in a row at some point. Probably not. Schedule's pretty hard.
Maybe.
But yeah, so thank you all for listening. And yeah, thank you guys for having me on. This was super fun.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to have you back. I'm Evan. You can find me on Twitter at Evan James Audio. You can find Mikey on Twitter at Kuya Mikey. Anders is not here, obviously, but you can find him at Anders Jorstad. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts, wherever it is you stream. Support the podcast on Patreon by going to patreon.com/neversunnyinseattle. The link will also be at the end of the video. We're also going to put the link to the Discord if you want to come and chat with us on game days, ask questions for the podcast. We're getting feedback on all that kind of stuff. Going pretty active so far, actually. So yeah, feel free to stop in. We're going to have a link for that as well. Thanks for listening. Go Mariners, and we'll see you back next week for episode 50.